You are terrible at spending money. Not because you're irresponsible. Not because you don't know how compound interest works or that avocado toast costs $8. You are terrible at spending money because nobody ever told you what money is actually for. And that silence is costing you everything. Here's the diagnosis, free of charge. You have been running a race with a finish line that someone else drew, using a currency you don't understand, toward a destination that won't make you feel anything when you arrive. Morgan Housel figured this out. It took him years of watching some of the wealthiest people on Earth quietly implode to piece it together. And what he found wasn't another budgeting hack or some 4-hour workweek trick. It was something uglier, more personal, the kind of truth that sits in your chest like a stone. This video isn't a book summary. Think of it as an intervention, because the mental trap you're caught in right now has a name, it has a shape, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Rajat Gupta ran McKinsey. Not worked at McKinsey. Ran it. He sat on the boards of Goldman Sachs and Procter & Gamble. His net worth sat comfortably north of $100 million. And then, facing the end of his career, he started leaking insider trading tips to a hedge fund manager. Not for survival. Not out of desperation. For more. The man blew up a legacy most people would trade their entire lives for, chasing a number that didn't even exist yet. You look at that story and think, that could never be me. But here's the truth you need to sit with. You did the same thing last Tuesday. Maybe it was a car upgrade you didn't need, a vacation you put on a card, a gadget whose previous version still worked perfectly. The scale is different. The mechanism is identical. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. Housel just calls it what it is. The goalpost moves. The second you reach a number, a lifestyle, a thing, your brain files it under normal and immediately starts scanning for the next level. You are on a treadmill that speeds up the moment you relax. And nobody installed an off switch. So here's the application, and it's brutal in its simplicity. Define enough before you earn it. Write it down. Put a number, a lifestyle, a specific image of a Tuesday afternoon in your head. What does enough actually look like in your body? Because if you don't define it before the money arrives, your brain will define it for you. And it will always define it as slightly more than what you have. That's not a moral failing. That's just the hardware. But knowing about the hardware is the first step to refusing to let it drive. Here's a story Housel tells that will gut punch your ego. He watched a man pull up to a hotel in a pristine Lamborghini. Everyone in the parking lot turned to look. And not a single person thought, that guy seems cool. Every person in that parking lot thought some version of, what would I look like in that car? Nobody was looking at the driver. They were projecting themselves into the seat. The man bought a $300,000 machine so strangers would admire him. And the strangers didn't. Now think about your own life. The watch, the handbag, the neighborhood you stretched into because it felt important. The clothes you wear to a job where nobody actually looks at your clothes. Ask yourself an honest question. Who was that purchase for? Was it for you? A genuine expression of something you love? Something that brings you daily pleasure? Or was it a bid for the attention of people whose names you will never know? The psychological trap here is that status spending feels like self-expression. It is not. It is social performance. And performances are exhausting because the audience never stays and the applause never lasts. Housel's argument is not that you should live like a monk. It's that status purchased with money is the most volatile investment you will ever make. It depreciates the second you drive it off the lot, the second someone else buys a newer version, the second the crowd moves on to the next shiny thing. The direct application is an audit. Right now, not later. Now, think about the last 5 purchases you made that cost real money. For each one, ask, would I still have bought this if nobody would ever know I owned it? Your honest answers will tell you more about your spending psychology than any budget spreadsheet ever could. Housel writes about a moment, personal, quiet, where he and his wife made a decision that felt almost embarrassing to admit out loud. They were doing fine financially, and they chose to spend money on things that bought them time. House cleaning, simpler meals, fewer obligations dressed up as opportunities. To an outside observer, it looked like laziness. From the inside, It felt like the first financially intelligent decision they'd ever made. Here's the framework underneath that choice. Money is not wealth. Money is potential energy. What you convert it into, that's wealth. And the highest yield conversion most people never make is the conversion from dollars to hours. Because hours, unlike dollars, cannot be earned back. You can make more money. You are, right now, actively losing time with no mechanism for retrieval. The psychologists who study this, and Housel pulls their work in, found something clarifying and a little devastating. Beyond a certain threshold, buying more things produces almost no lasting happiness. But buying more time, that relationship doesn't plateau. People who spend money to get time back, outsourcing, simplifying, choosing proximity over square footage, consistently report higher well-being than people who spend the same money on stuff. So here's the application. Calculate your actual hourly rate, not your salary divided by 40 hours. Your real rate, what you earn divided by every hour you spend working, commuting, recovering from work, thinking about work at midnight. Then use that number as a filter. Every time you face a financial decision, ask, does this purchase buy me more hours? Or does it cost me hours I don't get back? A cheap flight with 3 layovers might cost you 6 hours of your life. Is that worth whatever you saved? Maybe, but at least you're asking the right question now. Why are you still pretending that logic is what drives your choices? Seriously, you've read the books. You know about cognitive biases and loss aversion and the hedonic treadmill. You have a spreadsheet, probably, maybe 2, and you still bought the thing. You still upgraded when you didn't need to. You still kept up with people you don't even like. Because here's the reality nobody wants to put on a podcast. Every rational financial decision you've ever made was a post hoc justification for an emotional choice you'd already committed to. The research is airtight on this. The brain decides first, in milliseconds, in the limbic system, in the gut. The prefrontal cortex, the logical part, arrives late to the scene and writes a press release explaining the decision in terms that sound reasonable. Your spreadsheet is theater. Your budget is theater. Your 5-year financial plan is theater. Not because planning is useless, but because the enemy isn't your math. It's your identity. It's the story you've been telling yourself about what kind of person you are and what kind of life you deserve. And no spreadsheet cell in the history of money has ever changed an identity story. Housel's entire framework lives in that gap, the space between knowing what to do and actually doing it. The gap isn't ignorance. The gap is emotional infrastructure. And the first step to building that infrastructure is admitting that you're not a rational agent making optimal decisions. You're a human being making emotional decisions and then explaining them. That's not an insult. It's a starting point. Here's what it all collapses into, and it's simpler than it should be. Money is not a number. Money is a mirror. Every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of life you're choosing to live. Every financial decision you make is, whether you think about it this way or not, an act of identity design. The people who get this right, and Housel profiles them across decades of studying wealth, are not necessarily the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who stopped auditioning for an audience. They defined what a good life actually felt like in their own specific body. Not their parents' version, not their Instagram feed's version, theirs, and then they spent in alignment with that definition, ruthlessly, unapologetically. Here is the only question that matters. For every major financial decision you face, does this purchase buy me freedom, or does it buy me a cage? A mortgage on a house you genuinely love and can actually afford might be freedom. A mortgage on a house you bought because your college roommate bought in that neighborhood? Cage. A car that genuinely brings you joy to drive every morning? Could be freedom. A car you bought so the valet at the restaurant would look at you differently? Cage. Every time. Dressed up differently every time, but a cage. The shift Housel is asking you to make is not from spender to saver. That's the wrong axis. The shift is from reactive to intentional. From performing to living. From optimizing for the approval of strangers to building a life that actually fits you. Most people never make that shift. They spend their whole earning lives chasing a definition of success that someone else wrote, in a language that was never really theirs. They arrive at 65 or 75 or, if the market cooperates, a little earlier, and they look at the sum of their financial choices and realize they've been building someone else's life. That is not a personal finance problem. That is a total gut punch to your ego. The art of spending money is not about spending less. It's not about spending more. It's about spending on you, the actual you, not the performance of you, before you run out of the one thing that no amount of money can buy back. You know what that thing is? Stop spending it on other people's definitions of a good life.